I asked you why you didn't bring this story forward. Lee Weber didn't push Ann off, did he?
Oh, Stephen,
She threw herself off the bluff, and you drove her to it.
Ann didn't kill herself. I didn't drive her to do anything like that.
It really happened when you went to that bluff and saw Ann standing at the edge.
Stephen, I told you.
Did she jump?
No.
Did you push her?
No.
Why'd you go after her?
Because I couldn't stand it any longer. I had to tell her. I had to tell her. Because I thought then she'd understand. And she'd help me so I wouldn't have to lose you. I had to tell her I wasn't her mother. I never had any children.
Never.
I'm not your mother.
Who is Ann's mother? Who is my mother?
Catherine Peyton.
Catherine Peyton.
Yes.
Was Ann's mother? And mine?
Yes, Stephen.
How could you tell her this? How could you justify this fantastic masquerade?
I couldn't. But she asked me why I'd left her father. I told her it was over an affair. An affair, she said. You left your husband over a simple affair, as if it were my fault, not Brian's or Catherine's, but mine.
And then you told her.
Not all of it. Just enough to try to make her understand what it was like to watch your husband destroy a marriage over an infatuation with a spoiled, willful schoolgirl with a pretty face.
Were they in love?
In love? Catherine Peyton in love? Oh, I don't think she was ever in love in her life. She never loved anyone but herself.
Well, then what was the nature of their relationship?
The nature of their relationship was that Catherine Peyton always took what she wanted. She wanted my husband. The time came for her to pay for it. There was her father with his checkbook. Stephen, what do you think Brian Cord lived on all those years?
Are you telling me that he received financial help from Martin Peyton?
Call it what it was. It was blackmail.
Did you tell Ann that her father had been a blackmailer?
She insisted on knowing the truth. I couldn't hide it. So Brian Cord got his price for keeping silent. A regular check, and a good one. And Catherine married Leslie Harrington and spent the rest of her life queening it over Peyton Place as though none of this had ever happened.
So her father was a blackmailer who had been involved with Catherine Peyton. But you let her leave the house still believing you were her mother?
Yes.
Why?
Because I realized I'd already gone too far.
You'd gone just as far as you'd wanted to.
I was afraid Mr. Peyton might hear me.
He might have overheard you at any time, from the beginning. You did this as coldly and deliberately as anything you've done in your entire life.
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is not here to pass judgment on the witness, but to defend his own client against a charge of murder.
Mr. Cord?
Your Honor, This witness claims to have seen the alleged attack on the bluff. I believe this is an alibi for her own actions. By her own admission, Mrs. Cord's first conversation with the deceased left this already unstable girl in a state of great emotional turmoil. Now, it's my purpose to show that Mrs. Cord went after her, not, as she testified, because she couldn't bear to watch Anne suffer anymore, but to finish what she'd begun, to revenge herself on Brian Cord and Catherine Peyton by destroying their daughter.
You may proceed, Mr. Cord.
When you saw Anne again, for the last time, did you tell her you were not her mother?
Yes.
Did you give her a full history of her illustrious beginning?
I told her that Catherine Peyton was her mother.
Under what circumstances did Catherine Peyton meet your husband?
My husband was a painter, but not a very successful one, so he got a job teaching painting in a girls' finishing school where Catherine went. And I was the one that told him to take the job. You see, I realized that there he could meet the kind of people who would be able to afford to have him do their portraits.
And one of those people was Catherine Peyton.
She was just 17 and so beautiful. You see, Catherine Peyton always took whatever she wanted, and when she saw Brian, she wanted him too. Oh, she was very clever. She knew just how to go about it. She commissioned him to paint her portrait as a Christmas present for her father. And the week after Martin Peyton hung that portrait proudly over his mantel, Catherine confessed she was carrying Brian's child.
Did you know Mr. Peyton at the time?
That was the occasion of our meeting. Martin Peyton called me to come to his home, and he asked me questions. He wanted to know how I had allowed this to happen. What sort of man was my husband? Would he make any sort of suitable husband for his Catherine? He actually asked me that about the man I was married to.
And what did you tell him?
I said under the circumstances, it seemed to me it wasn't a question of suitability, but of necessity. And that if Brian wanted Catherine, then he could have her. I wouldn't stand in the way.
Did Mr. Peyton decide against the marriage?
Mr. Peyton was willing. Brian was not. Already had his fill of Miss Catherine and her tantrums. He wasn't about to marry her.
Who thought of the other solution?
Mr. Peyton? He told me that if I was going to divorce Brian, then I'd have to think about my future. See, I didn't have any money or any training. I didn't know how to support myself, so Mr. Peyton told me that if I would allow my name to be put on the birth records as the mother instead of Catherine, he would provide a good home for me and a job taking care of the child. Then there were two of you, and Brian decided he wanted his son, but I wouldn't let him have you. I made him take the girl.
Let it be shown in the record that the son refers to me, Stephen Cord. So you raised the boy purely to spite your former husband?
In the beginning, maybe, but Stephen, I learned to love you.
Let's say you remained faithful to your end of the bargain. You kept Catherine's secret, you took care of her child's physical needs, you supervised his schooling.
I loved you. Brian did it for the money, but you became mine, my son.
Did you tell Anne?
Yes, I begged her to make you understand.
Did you tell Anne that her father raised her purely as the price of his regular check? Did you say that to her?
Maybe in the beginning, but later...
Later you told her more. Perhaps you even reminded her that her real mother was playing golf at the country club the day she was accused of blinding Christopher Weber.
Don't tell me about Catherine Peyton. Didn't I have to listen to her whispering, laughing on the back stairs when my husband locked into the studio with him? I wasn't allowed to enter. And then the next year, watching her sweep down the grand staircase all dressed in white, all dewy, innocence radiant, smiling at you. Her child lying asleep in my bedroom.
Mrs. Cord, please confine yourself to what is relevant.
Relevant? Is it relevant that I would have been Mrs. Martin Peyton except for Catherine? And she decided I wasn't fit to marry into our family.
I only want to know what you actually said to the deceased girl.
I said to Anne, I said, forgive me. Forgive me. Oh, forgive me, my dad. Forgive me.
And having said it, you walked away and left her to die.
Oh, God, forgive me. Forgive me. Forgive me.
Mrs. Cord. No further questions.
Preview from the continuing story of Peyton Place.
It's quite possible, isn't it, that Lee Weber wasn't there? And that you pushed that poor, unfortunate girl?
Not now.
When? Tomorrow when it's over?
It won't be.
It will be.
But you can't use me to make your bargains anymore. And you can't make me love her any more or any less by dragging her memory through a garbage heap.